Good evening, all. Thank you for joining a special committee meeting of the Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability. My name is Councilman TJ Clark. I serve as the majority leader for the Hartford City Council and co-chair of this committee. And we are joined by our council president, who's also a co-chair for this committee, Mally Rosado. We have Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, who's a voting member, Councilman John Gale, who is a voting member, and Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, who is a non-voting member. And we are joined by many of our colleagues around the city of Hartford. We have I always want to call him our Attorney General, our Corporation Counsel, Howard Rifkin, and I do believe I saw our Director of Development Services, Mr. I. Charles Matthews, who's joined us, as well as our Director of Economic Development, Aaron Howard, David Grant from our council office, and Gina. Gina, what office are you from?
So my name is Gina Rossage, and I am a faculty member at the University of St. Joseph Department of Social Work and Equitable Community Practice.
Thank you so much for joining us. We also have our city engineer, Frank De La Repa, and other representatives based upon the items that we are going to be discussing tonight. We are also broadcasting live from Xfinity, Comcast, as well as Frontier, and through HPA-TV. We are going to be, we have a lengthy agenda, and so we are going to try to move as expeditiously as possible. And if there are no objections based upon our lengthy agenda, we're going to be taking these items out of order if there are no objections from our committee members.
No objections. No objections.
All right, hearing none, we're going to start off by item 2.1, which is a resolution introduced by Council President Rosado with accompanying authorization authorizing the mayor to accept a grant of $100,000 from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving for the City of Hartford's Universal Basic Income Pilot Program. And I do believe David Grant will be doing a presentation.
Yes, it will definitely be a short presentation as we've talked about UBI in general with all of our council members. Just to recap, the Universal Basic Income Task Force was created at the beginning of 2020. And over the course of 8 months, we met on a regular basis in order to produce a final report to City Council, which outlined the design of a program should you all choose to implement one here in the city of Hartford. I have a few members of our research team on the call with me, Dr. Gina Rosich, Dr. Amanda Detmer, and Dr. Stephen Ross. And they will be available to answer any general questions. Talking on the resolution in front of this committee tonight, as part of the work that I did with the Universal Basic Income Task Force, I was also tasked with reaching out to various foundations in order to secure additional funding to help support the administrative costs of implementing a pilot. We were awarded a grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving in the amount of $100,000 that would be given to the city of Hartford in order to support operational costs. There was a resolution that was submitted December 13th. Through my communication with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, there were some recommended changes to that resolution. And so I did have an opportunity to send that out to everyone tonight. The resolution, the resolves are all the same. However, whereas 8, 9, and 10 have all been slightly modified to better reflect the wishes of the anonymous donor, as well as the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. And if you'd like, I can read them however you'd like to move forward.
Could you read them for the record, David? Yeah, because I don't have it, David. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So whereas 8, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, remember, these are the modified version of the resolution. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving has approved a grant of $100,000 to the city of Hartford for the Universal Basic Income Pilot Program as recommended by an anonymous donor advised fund held at Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. The wording is slightly modified just to better reflect the accuracy of how the grant is being awarded. But essentially the substance is still the same. Whereas 9, this is a one-time investment by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and the anonymous donor, and is intended to be repeated and is not intended to be repeated in subsequent years. The only addition or change with this whereas is that and the anonymous donor was added. And then the final one is the release of funds will be contingent on passage of this resolution by the Court of Common Council and written confirmation that program expenses will be incurred within 60 days. So once the resolution is passed, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving is requesting that we provide them with a written timeline of when funds expect to be used in order to support the pilot program. And those are the only changes. Question? Yes.
I just thank you for that information. I just have one question. I was told that there was going to be a location of a organization that was going to be the fiduciary, kind of the fiduciary, the one administering the funds. Is that still the case, or is it still looking that a city department was going to be the one to administer these funds?
And so in terms of this specific resolution, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving specifically requested that the funds be given directly to the city, and then it would be up to the city to pay for whatever expenses we wish to cover to support the pilot. I believe that my research team has put in the recommendations that a partnering organization would still be identified to administer funds directly to participants. And there are some requirements dealing with benefits cliffs as to why that is. These funds, I imagine, and this is through several conversations that I've had with the foundation, these funds would be to support administrative costs, potentially hiring on a full-time program manager, any kind of additional part-time administrative staff. This could go to support our research team. This is really just for costs that wouldn't be associated or may not be associated rather with giving directly to the public.
Okay, and so are you looking at administrative costs of around the normals, like 3 or 5%?
I mean, potentially. I think it really comes down to you all to decide how best to implement the program based on the recommendations provided by the task force.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, David. Just so basically, the task force have not have a budget, or was a budget submitted to the Hartford Foundation?
No, there was no budget, official budget submitted to the foundation. The task force research team is currently in the process of putting together a budget based on how much is going to be required for example, processing the samples, or how much we should expect to pay a passive control group or an active control group.
Okay, and so basically, the overall funds for the entire program so far is only 100,000.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what department would administer these funds? Have any research been asked of the city? So out of the 100,000, 3 to 5% or whatever the percentage normally had been costs will be paid for a staff person to help administer the program?
So the way that and again, it really falls down to how City Council would like to implement a pilot. But initially in our discussions over the last 8 months, we envisioned that City Council would be responsible for essentially launching the pilot and then potentially partnering with, for example, the Department of Equity and Opportunity to help in the support of the program. I can tell you that we're not at that point yet. It's really up to you all to decide how best to move forward with it. But I have spoken with the finance team, and they are prepared to establish a separate account to house these funds until they're expensed or until they're spent.
Oh, so the finance team for the city of Hartford.
Correct.
Okay. And when you made the statement, again, through you, Mr. Chair, you said the city council decide and how to administer, or I would say the city council to, because not in the whereas there has been no directive in the whereas for the council to decide. So does that mean the council, another resolution comes back for the city council to put something on the table from the research team and how to administer the funds?
I mean, potentially, I would say that council president would work with me on how to put that together. Potentially, it could be a resolution that comes back before city council on timelines and a budget to implement the pilot. And then you all could vote on that to officially launch the pilot so that everyone is aware of what kind of parameters we're working within. The task force was charged with creating a report on what a pilot could potentially look like based on research and equity and community feedback. And so in the original resolution, we were charged with producing that report by December. We did that. And so the report was submitted and received by council. This is a supplementary resolution based on funding that was offered to us through the work that we were doing naturally over the last 8 months. Anything further, we would probably have to come back to the council for.
Yeah, I did receive that report, David, and that was very well done. I have to commend you and your team for actually really thinking outside the box, and actually putting some good ideas on the table from the little I know of programs I've read throughout the United States. So through you, Mr. Chair, that is it for me for questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions from our colleagues?
Yes, I just, no questions. I just want to commend Dave and his team. Thank you very much for the excellent work that you have done so far for the UBI program.
And really, I would like to thank City Council for trusting us to do this work. Truthfully, Amanda working with Yale, Dr. Ross working with UConn, and Gina working with St. Joseph's. We had an amazing team of volunteers who were committed to seeing this project through, and it would not have been possible without them. And again, without the support of our city council. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Councilwoman Surgeon.
Sure, I'd like to put motion on the floor to send this back to the council, favorable approved resolution.
Motion has been made by Councilwoman Surgeon with a favorable recommendation to send it back to council.
I'll second it.
There's been a second by Council President Rosado. Any questions, discussions? Hearing none, saying none, all in favor of this item, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. And you got Councilwoman Surgeon, myself, and Council President Rosado. And this item has now been passed and will be sent back to council with a favorable recommendation. Thank you, David, very much. Appreciate it. Second item we're going to take up right now, it is item number 2.5, Mayor Broden with the company resolution regarding the aggregate sum of these outstanding receivable of 6 loans. And I do believe that we are going to be have a presentation by our Director of Finance, Leanne Rawls, and our Director of Economic Development, Aaron Howard. Either of you can take it away.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you, Councilman Clark and council members. I'm Aaron Howard from Economic Development under the Department of Development Services. Before you, you have a request to write off about 6 loans. These are 6 old commercial economic development commercial loans that actually predate me. So I have actually very little information on every specific loan itself. Over the past year, or about 2 years ago, we had an audit finding when most of these loans came up as part of our audit finding. Finance department, racing at the time, worked very closely with the legal team to inspect all of these, go back to the loan documents and to figure out if we could actually go after and try to receive some of these funds or not. And as you can see in the letter and in the resolution, that all 6 of these loans, we don't have the ability to actually collect on. So I don't know if you'd like me to go through each one specifically. Okay. So the first one's the South End Group partnership. It's for 686 Maple Ave. The outstanding amount is $90,000. The original loan was $120,000. The borrower repaid $30,000, leaving that $90,000 unpaid. Outstanding balance is uncollectible and no longer enforceable because it was first issued in 2002. Medical Temp Force LLC, this is 545 Albany Ave. Amount outstanding is around 66,000. Original loan amount was also 120,000. A portion was repaid, leaving a portion unpaid. Also, again, research, unenforceable, uncollectible. This was issued in 2000. Park Squire Association Partnership. This is 48 Main Street. This is around $62,000 outstanding. Another loan for about 130,000, leaving an unbalance, paid unbalance. Again, no longer enforceable. These were issued back in 2003 and 2004. There's Lester Fitzgerald and Associates, 2404 Main Street. Outstanding was 90,000. This was never collected upon, and there were no repayments. However, the loan was extinguished in a bankruptcy proceeding, and this loan was issued in 2007. And for clarity, when foreclosure actions and things of that nature, when we use these loans and use property as security, that's what happens. If it gets foreclosed out, we extinguish our ability to go after those loans if it's tied to something like that. And then that's the same issue with Market 21 LLC. The original loan amount was for about 125,000. That was also outstanding. They made no repayments. This was secured against the borrower's primary residence at 30 Highland Street in Weathersfield, which they've lost in a foreclosure proceeding, and our interest was extinguished in the foreclosure proceeding. And that was issued in 2011. And then lastly, we have the San Juan Center, Tito Collado, which was 1293 to 1297 Main Street. Amount outstanding was around 78,000. The original loan was about 121,000. The property was sold at a tax deed sale, which resulted in our loan interest being extinguished. And that was first pre-issued in 1997. And if you have any further questions, Leanne, I don't know if there's anything else we can add on our end of what we've learned about the loans.
Thank you for that explanation. How often do these type of loans be requested to be forgiven?
I want to say the last time we did a loan write-off for loans was maybe 3 years ago, around 3 years ago, and it came through the revenue manager at the time, Yolita Lazowskis.
Okay. Now, would this be considered something separate than when the tax collector comes to us asking us to forgive these certain amount of loans that are uncollectible?
Correct.
Okay.
So these are all non-general fund loans. So these are all CDBG generated loans. And again, they're old. They go back to 2002, 2003.
Oh, wow.
And DDS and the finance department researched collectability on these loans. And as the accounts receivable policy requires, DDS went to Corporation Counsel to review our collectability against these loans, and Corporation Counsel deemed them uncollectible. So the policy requires any individual loan amount over $50,000 be presented to City Council for write-off approval.
And in this instance, would there be any way for the city to recoup this money through another mechanism? Even though, because these are government funds, so basically the government is going to be shorted of this uncollectible amount, correct?
Well, it would be through the CDBG loan fund.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Rawls, and thank you, Ms. Howard. So with my lack of knowledge base on CDBG funds, so when we write this off, and do we have to repay back any of these funds at CDBG time, or how does that work?
Erin, you want to take that one?
I don't think we do. I think once you've made the commitment with the loan funds, I don't think we have to. I think it's part of the previous allocation. I think we do have to report it as part of the CDBG program, but if the funds were always intended to be loan funds to support that, I don't think that there's really no loss. We've already lost the dollars because the dollars have been invested in the property. So under CDBG, it's been invested into. We were just hoping to recoup that to use those dollars at a later date. Depending upon the structure of the loan. Again, some of these could be set up as forgivable loans. None of these, but other CDBG programs could be set up as forgivable loan as long as there's a performance on that investment for clarity. But I do not believe so. I can confirm that, but I do not believe that will have any impact. We have to pay anything more than what we've already done.
Okay, and so through you, Mr. Chair. So actually, the properties was the asset that was tied to the loans. And so I noticed one or two through bankruptcy, the loans were extinguished. What about the ones, the first couple of them, if they're tied to the property?
There may be, which I do know there is a statute of limitations. That may be another reason why, depending on the time and when these were issued, when we could actually, if we haven't made claim or file a lien against the loan over a certain period of time, we may not be able to collect under that reason alone.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a quick question as a follow-up to Councilwoman Surgeon's question. So in the future, if one of these businesses would apply to the city through the CDBG program, or any city that they may take a business, is there a file kept by the city or the federal government, and would they be allowed to receive CDBG funds again?
So I would say that since I've started, we haven't, on the economic development side, these types of loans, we have not issued any economic development loans to date. As you know, there's some new programs coming out and they have strict guidelines. I think every program has a certain level of guideline and oversight. The only thing that has held us back on issuing new loans or grants has to do with whether or not they're a tax delinquent grantee. And I don't know, I would actually unfortunately defer this to Howard if there's anything on the ordinance that says that we cannot issue loans to anyone that's delinquent in the past or failed on a loan. I'm not sure, Howard.
It would really be dependent on what CDBG guidelines might be. But generally speaking, I mean, as a matter of principle, somebody who has filed for bankruptcy previously would not necessarily, nor from matter of policy, should necessarily be precluded from competing for other loans, and it would be against the business enterprise that they were applying on behalf of.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up, Councilman, Finance Department does maintain the listing of approved write-offs, and those write-offs are processed through our financial software, Munis. So there is a detailed trail of the write-off in the system. So should anyone ask, we would be able to generate a listing.
Thank you. So that makes sense, and there is some trail that is okay. All right, wonderful. Any other questions from my colleagues? Hearing none, seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to send this item back with a favorable recommendation back to council.
Motion has been made by Council President.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Surgeon. Any discussions? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. This item is passed with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we are moving on to our next item, which would be item 2.4. Mayor Bronin with the company resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Hartford to allocate $1,454,928 in the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 for the capital improvement plan. And we have our city engineer, Frank De La Repa.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This particular resolution has to do with a follow-up project at Hartford High School. A few years ago, we received $1 million to install artificial turf. And at the time, they thought they could afford lights and track as well. And what happened was the bids came in so high, I was just able to afford to do the track alone. And the field alone, and I had to find extra money just to do that. That was 1.6 million. My understanding, we finished last spring or early summer. My understanding is that they had a wonderful football season on that field. They loved it, but they want their lights and track. So this resolution is to install the lights and track for a total of $1,454,928. We did a lot of prep work, so it should go well, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's the same contractor that did the field. He had bid alternates for the track and light, but like I said, I couldn't afford it then, so we had to adjust some of the prices post-COVID and all that, and so this is what we're asking for to complete the entire project at the Hartford High School.
Thank you, Frank. Quick question. How long do you expect this project to take? And since it's non-construction season right now, when would the construction begin?
They're already ordering the lights. We should be ready for football season. It'll be tight, but we should be ready. I deal with the AD over there all the time. So if for some reason something goes awry and they have to reschedule that, they'll have to do that. But right now we plan on playing football there in the fall.
So the lights will be installed at what month?
There's a pretty good lead time. Lights should go in sometime this summer, maybe June, July at the latest. It's the track that's going to take some time.
When would that track installation process begin?
That track should be this is winter, right? We can't get out there. We should be able to start in April. That track should be done by the end of summertime. This is if everything goes well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Is it the same track that was installed over at Weaver?
That's a good question. And I should know that because I worked on Weaver. I'm not sure, Councilman. They don't vary too much, but this track is not getting completely dug up. The top comes off and it gets a new topping. And they take care, if any of the base is subject to settlement, to go ahead and put in some new base material. But basically, it's getting a new top. That's why it shouldn't take that long.
Okay, and the number of lanes are going to remain the same.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. De La Ripa. Just a quick question. Is this in addition to our CIP budget that we did for the 21-22 fiscal year? And why didn't this proposal get into that budget process?
The answer to your question is it was not. This particular resolution is new because we could not afford the track and the lighting when the original resolution for the $1 million to do everything. They thought they could do everything for $1 million, and they couldn't back in 21-22. So that's why this is being added now.
Okay, so this is in addition to the actual budget, our CIP budget.
Yes, it is, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions from my colleagues? Hearing none.
Councilman Clark, I'd like to make a motion to send this item back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Motion has been made by Council President for a favorable recommendation back to council. Do I hear a second, Councilwoman Surgeon?
Yes, sir.
And Councilwoman Surgeon, second. Any discussions? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. The motion has been passed. Favorable recommendation back to council for our next meeting. Thank you very much, Frank. You have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good seeing you. Our next item is going to be item 2.3. Mayor Bronin with the company resolution. Sorry, no. Item 2.2, Mayor Bronin with the company resolution authorizing to execute all necessary documents and agreements and to take such other actions as he and the Corporation Council may deem appropriate for the best interest of the city in order to enter into a revised ground lease in agreement with the current owners of the Hilton Hotel and RMS companies. And we have a good number of representative parties here. And so our presentations today will be done by, I'll kick it off back to, where there she is, Erin Howard.
Sure. I think Director Charles Matthews will probably kick this off.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. My voice may go up and down. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I want to make sure that I clearly state and have an opportunity to put all the issues on the table, just so you know, in terms of how we believe the agenda will flow. Aaron and I will make a presentation, and we have a deck that we'll be presenting to the council members. And the purpose of the deck is to make sure we all start on the same page, that all of the facts associated with this transaction will be clear to all of the council members present and to those folks who may be listening in. We also have Mark and Lynn Bowman, the owners of and operators of the Hilton. They will be available to answer any questions the council members have. And we also have Mike from CRDA will be available to answer any questions that may come up. Again, it's important that as we move this resolution forward, that we all start out with the same information. So during the course of the presentation, if something comes up that obviously might be puzzling to a council member, I would urge you to stop and give us an opportunity to explain it and then move on. Hopefully at the conclusion of the presentation made by Aaron and myself, and additional information that may be provided by Mark, Lynn, and or Mike, will be available, obviously, to answer all questions. Let me say this as we go through these presentations for council members to consider. This is the deal. And I think it's important for the council members to understand this is the deal. You have your prerogatives as council members, and certainly as a non-council member, I respect your prerogative. The only option for us that we can see, if for some reason you're not in agreement with this transaction, is that the Hilton will close. And closure of the Hilton is not a win for the city. It's not a win for the neighborhoods. It's not a win for anyone. Matter of fact, in my view, and as you see from the presentation, it would be very destructive to the long-term interests of the city. With that, I'll let Aaron start the presentation, and then I will jump in at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Charles. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that? Is that okay? Great. Awesome. So thank you, council members. Thank you, Charles. Today before you, we have a proposal, a council resolution that would authorize the mayor to revise the existing ground lease between the city of Hartford and 315 Trumbull Streets Associates, which is the legal name of the current owners of the Hilton. The proposal on the table is to convert the existing 393-room hotel into a downsized 166-room hotel with 147 residential units. So a few points. The hotel in general has struggled financially and has underperformed since its reopening in 2005. So for some background history and current conditions, in 2004, the property was purchased by an affiliate of the Waterford Group, where about 22 million of their own owner equity was contributed to date in that property since 2004. In 2010, the property owners, my apologies, required some financial assistance from the city. And so the city supported a $7 million HUD Section 108 loan, which is a guarantee program that utilizes our future CDBG allocations to allow us to provide lending as a lending tool for developers and owners of a hotel. And in 2019, the hotel required additional funds to renovate to keep the Hilton affiliation. And the city and HUD approved a second 108 loan for about $4.75 million. But unfortunately, as everyone is aware, we never executed the second 108 loan due to the COVID pandemic. So to kind of give some background as where we are today and how the pandemic has impacted both the Hartford Hilton and the nation. For the Hilton alone, occupancy dropped from around 67% to at the peak of when we had executive orders and closures, we went from 3 to 10% of occupancy at its worst. And currently it's averaging about 30%. We're not really seeing a major increase in the hotel usage right now, especially with this new variant. There's been a significant reduction in staffing. Originally, when we proposed the second 108 loan, there was about 139 full-time equivalent employees working at the hotel. And since the pandemic, the hotel's been operating with about 25 to 30 employees at a time due to the reduction in occupancy. The owners themselves have been burning around $250,000 to $300,000 a month just to keep the hotel open. And then one of the impacts or benefits of the COVID-19 program was they did receive money from the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, which helped preserve jobs. And the owners were able to receive some funding, but they're currently running out of that funding, which has led to this imminent threat of closure for the hotel. So.
Aaron, just stop. How much did they get in the PPP fund?
Mark, do you mind answering that? Or Len?
Sorry, I was muted. So we got in excess, I need to just check my records quickly. So I'm confused between another property, but we got at least just over $3 million is my understanding. Chris, are you on? Can you tell us what the exact number is? And then the first amount was essentially forgiven, and the second amount is not forgiven because of there's an additional loan because it was a ratio of labor to other expenses.
So you had two loans or two grants?
There were two tranches of PPP. There was the first one, and then the government gave a second.
So a total of 3 million?
Chris, do you have the exact number?
Bear with me. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
I don't want to tell you that I forget the exact amount. I'm just looking up our files. If you had other questions, we could come back to it. I don't want to hold it.
So what I'll do is I'll just keep going a little bit with the nationwide trends.
Sure.
So with the nationwide trends right now, business and group travel is not expected to reach pre-pandemic levels until 2024. And of course, if we continue to receive more variants, that date could be pushed out. U.S. business travel into 2021 was down 59 billion across the country compared to 2019. In Connecticut alone, we were down 67%, or nearly 400 million across the state. In addition, international travel, as you know, continues to be impacted, which has impacted hotel industry. And then more specifically, full service convention dependent hotels in urban markets remain disproportionately impacted. And as you're aware, Hartford, with our corporate community, we have a lot of large corporate companies in the city that have moved to remote work, which has also impacted directly to the Hartford Hilton. And then the other trend that we're seeing, which we can talk to a little bit towards the end of the presentation, is the fact that we're seeing a lot of hotel closures across the country and a lot of conversions of hotels into residential and or part residential and hotel. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to this slide to Charles.
Let me go to the next slide. And with the council indulgence, let me just do a little bit of a history lesson. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I just want to make sure I take the opportunity, given my age and how long I've been around, to kind of give people a sense of what transpired in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. And let me just say this. Once they ran through 84 through the city, as all of us know, 84 divided the north end from the south end. And I do recall being around in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and we tried as hard as we could to convince developers and investors to do development projects north of 84. The truth be told, we was unsuccessful. As you all know, people are funny about their money. And many developers felt there would not be a return on their investment. So we wound up with a sea of parking lots north of 84, and everything, every development project, people tried to squeeze in the downtown area, whether it was the State House Square, whether it was the Silks building, whether it was a Gold building. Everyone tried to do downtown south of 84, but no one wanted to go north. And we continue to find an opportunity. And quite frankly, a few years ago, we stumbled on the baseball stadium. And many of us who support the baseball stadium made the argument that the baseball stadium would be our Bloomingdale's. It would be our Neiman Marcus. It would be that structure that would give investors confidence to look at opportunities north of 84. And as you all know, the city made a major commitment in building a baseball stadium, and they went out on the limb to build a baseball stadium. And the truth be told, and I would argue, some may disagree, that but for the baseball stadium, we have accomplished the vision we thought about north of 84. We now have a development going on at Parcel C, where we're building 270 units of apartments and the 3-car garage. Across the street, we're building 500 plus units and a 500-car garage. The success of the Arrowhead project from Pleasant Street down to the Flatiron building, I would argue, in terms of investor confidence, is directly tied to the success of the baseball stadium. 50 Morgan Street, that building being converted to all apartments, is tied to the baseball stadium and the success of the baseball stadium. And I know firsthand that the Guest Quarters Hotel on Market Street would not have been built but for the success of the baseball stadium. That baseball stadium gave us an opportunity to do a whole lot of things and to build on successes and increase investors' willingness to invest their dollars and get a reasonable return of their investment. I would argue, and I hope council members agree, that in many respects, we have the same problem with the Hilton Hotel. The Hilton Hotel is right directly in the center, in the central business district. It serves as a major catalyst for the city. Any closure of that hotel would impact the Excel Center and all they do there, impact the number of jobs that may or may not be created at the Excel Center. It would also impact the convention center. And I would argue further that all the small businesses that are now planning on increasing their cash flow because the convention hotel, the convention has an opportunity to book more events, bring more people to town because the hotel is ongoing, even with fewer rooms. They will lose their opportunity to keep their existing workforce and even grow perhaps their existing workforce. So as we try to connect these dots, it's really important for us to understand that the city made a major investment and a major commitment, and they have real vision with the stadium. And I think, although I understand there are some difficulties overall with this deal, that we need to look at the Hilton Hotel as the same opportunity and with vision. And the vision, I would argue, is we need to grow a lot of our operations, a lot of our businesses in and around the central business district, in and around the hotel. The Hilton is critical. It's critical that we keep the Hilton open and functioning. Even though it's fair to say they'll have fewer rooms, they'll have fewer employees. At the end of the day, many more employees will be impacted if, in fact, we cannot keep this Hilton opening and functioning. That's that slide. And we can move to the next slide, Aaron, unless I missed something.
I got a question, right, Charles? How many total hotel rooms will we have downtown Hartford?
When I imagine from that question, if you're talking about what we may have at the Renaissance and what we may have at the Goodwin Hotel and at Goodwin and what we may have at guest quarters, I'm not certain of that exact number. Perhaps, Aaron, as we go through the presentation later, we can dig that out by looking at the number of rooms at the Renaissance and the guest quarters and the Goodwin. I'm not sure exactly what that number is, but Mike may know, given
Charles,
his close involvement.
Yeah, Charles, with the Hilton becoming the DoubleTree, we'll have just shy of 1,000. It's actually 996 rooms downtown.
Great.
If the Hilton, as it stands today, were there, pump the number by 147. So that's roughly 1,000 to 1,200 is the range, depending on what happens with the Hilton.
Thank you, Mike.
And Mike, just one last question to you, Mike. So that's an average that we've had over the last decades in the city. Occupancy rate when we have convention before we've gone through this pandemic, is it a good number for the city to have?
No, actually, we're actually down about 500 rooms since the pandemic started. Just before the pandemic, we commissioned a study to determine what is the need for hotels in the downtown to support the convention center, as well as the civic center, and meet other needs. And we were 500 short then. So, realistically, we've gone 1,000 the wrong way. We don't have the 500 that was suggested we add, and we've lost about 500. We lost the Radisson, we lost the Homewood Suites, the Hilton, about one half the Hilton. It's not unique to Hartford. The Farmington Marriott's closed, the Cromwell Radisson's closed. There's discussion of some other hotels in the region that will be closing. There is a major shakeout in the industry, but what's critical, I think, to Charles' point is keeping some minimum number of rooms is critical to sustain the jobs and the events that are at the convention and XL Center and eventually in the streets, at restaurants and parking garages and everybody else who makes a buck off those buildings. We're at a point, if we lose the Hilton, we will fall below the minimum threshold and we'll have some serious problems. Losing events, maintaining big events, and frankly, employing in both buildings. And to the point, both the convention center and the XL Center are unionized buildings. Different unions, different representations, but the man hours that'll be needed with less events and smaller events is self-evident. So the hotel saving the Hilton, at least saving 166 of those rooms, is a crisis for us at this point. To the occupancy, for a hotel to have a level of success, to keep investors, to keep its mortgages, to make its employees meet their maximum number of hours, you need to be operating between 60 and 70% occupancy on a daily basis. We were getting close to that with some of the buildings downtown, but there are days when it's very low and days you do very well, of course, but it has to average out at that. Right now, the Hilton's running below 30%. The Marriott is struggling as well. Separate issue, separate day. But at 30%, 25, 30%, these are just economic, painful properties to keep operating. So trimming it, changing its operating profile, changing the marketplace it appeals to, reducing its operating costs, making new investments in some of the capital. It's all part of the strategy that tries to keep us at least at 1,000 units.
Aaron, I think Mike and I blew up your presentation a little bit, but why don't you go through your remaining slides and try to put all, so the council will be well aware of all the issues. Put
Sure.
those on the table.
Absolutely. I think the one other really important point, and that needs to just be loud and clear, is that the implication of closure also puts at risk the city's CDBG future allocations. And so because we did a HUD 108 loan, we did originally a $7 million loan. There's approximately $5.25 million that's an outstanding balance right now. If this hotel closes, then we will have to come up with that amount of funding to address the existing loan that's in place. For those that don't know, the HUD 108 is a guarantee program. So it's a third-party lender that we use our HUD allocations to guarantee the payment back to the third party. And should this close, someone has to make that payment. And we have made a commitment as a city to make that payment if the property owner is not willing to or able to do that.
Right.
So that's really important.
Okay.
That said, we have been doing everything we possibly can to help this hotel prior to and during the pandemic. So this slide just talks to what we actually have and the multiple attempts that have been made since March of 2020. So as you know, the PPP funds, the property owners were able to those dollars to keep the hotel open. Back in about the summer of 2020, a decision was made by the owners that we really needed to do something. They professionally marketed the hotel for sale to go into an auction in November of 2020. Unfortunately, that sale was unsuccessful. The reasons they received had to do with market instability, the high operating costs, and quite frankly, more desire to convert it to residential. And at the time, we really need to support this as a hotel. The city was really focused on maintaining it as a hotel. In spring of 2021, as a result of the auction, there were some parties that were interested, and so the property owners negotiated directly with some potential buyers. They got as far along as with one potential buyer, and the deal collapsed very late in the game due to the high operating costs. And that happened in the spring, April, May of 2021. From there was just really no other interest until RMS Companies, as everyone is fully aware, Randy Salvatore, who has made a significant investment in and around the stadium, proposed an alternative option with the current property owners with the idea to partially convert the hotel to residential. And so since then, in the fall, the city has been working with both the property owner and RMS to come to the table with a proposal that could work, that could save the hotel, but also put it in a position where it was more financially feasible and set it up for greater success in the future. So at this point, we have done everything we can. We've exhausted all of our options. We're running out of time. And most importantly, PPP funding is running out, and this hotel is at its breaking point and is very close to closure if we don't do something very soon. So with that, I am going to just run through really quickly the overall key terms and highlights of the proposal that's in front of you today. So the proposal here is for Trumbull Street Associates to partner with developer RMS companies Randy Salvatore. It will maintain the property as a first-class hotel, the hotel portion, albeit it'll be downsized to a DoubleTree by Hilton, still within the Hilton brand, but it reduces some of the services, which creates less of an operating cost or a higher operating cost to make it more feasible to operate as a hotel. The asset is going to be converted into 3 legal condominium units. The hotel, residential, and there will be a common space, community space that's still to be determined exactly how that will be used, but it's open for ideas and for opportunities for community use. The proposal is for a 49-year lease with both entities with the option to extend, with Trumbull Street Associates. And the total cost of the overall redevelopment of the property is just over $29 million. And most importantly, in this deal structure, we would retain and continue to pay on the existing HUD 108 loan, and we would not move forward with the second 108 loan that was awarded in 2019. For the hotel, I broke this up into hotel versus residential. The hotel is proposing to downsize to 166 hotel rooms. It will be use restricted as a first-class hotel. We restructured the pilot payments in lieu of taxes, as this is a ground lease, to 3% gross revenues, with a minimum pilot to be reset in the 21st year and every 10 years thereafter. In addition, in the term sheets, the property owners are required to continue collective bargaining agreement with Unite Here Local 217 and to engage in good faith negotiations. I'd like a point to note that earlier today, Council did receive additional terms that reflected some of the negotiations with the living with wages and such for the current employees. So I make sure to take a look at that email you did receive from Howard earlier today, specific to those items. And then just the other side, just some total costs. It's about $11 million project. CRDA, the state of Connecticut, has invested in this deal, keep the existing 108 loan, and there is some new investment, new equity coming from the property owners, $1 million to make this deal work. As for the residential portion, they're going to convert 10 floors, the top 10 floors, into 147 residential units. It'll be a mix of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units. There is a 20% workforce housing requirement. The pilot payment for here would be set at 8.5% of the annual gross revenues. And for this part of the deal, as it's construction, it will be subject to approval of city would have approval of the redevelopment plans, but in addition, the developer is required to comply with the city's contracting requirements. So the 15% minority contractors, 30% Hartford workers on the job, and 50% trade workers, and of course, the city of Hartford's living wage. And this deal particularly is about $17.8 million or so. Again, CRDA state bond, which was approved in the previous bonding commission for $5.9 million. The developer is proposing about $9.4 million in conventional financing, and the developer himself is bringing an additional $2.5 million to this deal. So with that, that was the end of our presentation just to talk about the deal itself. Today we do, as we pointed out, have representation from 315 Trumbull Street Associates, both Len and Mark Woolman, as well as developer Randy Salvatore, who can speak to his committed investment to this development deal, as well as his investment across the city of Hartford. And then, of course, you've already heard from him, but he can speak to more, Mike Friedman from the Capital Region Development.
Let me suggest this, Mr. Chair. Given the commentary that's already been made by all the parties, I wonder if this may be a good opportunity to pause and see if the council members have any direct questions to Mr. Salvatore or Lynn or Mark Moman or myself or anyone else.
Thank you, Director Matthews. Councilwoman Rossetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of things, and I jump in, whoever wants to answer this. Maybe I should know the answer to this, but I do not. One, could someone define or give me the explanation of workforce housing, and we're saying 20%, and how that compares to other projects? And two, the payment in lieu of taxes, the 8.5% of gross revenue, how does that compare to other projects we've done? Thank you.
Sure. Randy, do you want to take a stab at it?
I don't. Sure. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. I don't know the technical part, so I can't answer the technical on the workforce housing. What I can tell you is, in terms of the rental rates that we're projecting for this property, they are significantly lower than at least as far as I know of all the new projects that have been presented of late. Our projections are for the studios, $800 a month in rent. For the one bedrooms, $1,475 a month. So all of those rents, even as they are, if we call those market rents, fall below or in terms of the area median incomes of the area. So technically, at our pro forma rents, we're providing workforce housing for all of our units as it is right now. So
well, excuse me 1 minute. Excuse me, Randy.
Sure.
Aaron, maybe you can, if we put in 20% workforce housing, I'm just wondering why we brought it out. I hear what you're saying, Randy, but maybe someone could explain then why we said 20%.
Sure.
Sure. So typically, as you know, we try to require some level of affordability where it's appropriate. And in this particular deal, we try to get as close to that 20%. Basically, it restricts him to a workforce housing for a period of time between median house or the AMI between 80 and 120%. So
that's the definition, Aaron?
For the workforce housing, it's between 80 to 120 AMI.
Okay.
And what we're doing is even though the point is made that the rents, for all intents purposes, are considered affordable, what it does is it restricts the developer to that 20% of those units will have to stay 80 to 120. I think it's 20 years is how it's set up in the term sheet. So that in the event the market goes up, those dollars, those units are still fixed at 80 to 120 if the market rates of the units go up in the future. So it restricts it specifically for that use for the next 20 years.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And then in terms of the lease payments, I can't speak to all the other area deals. I can speak to the Dono deal, the land lease there, because it's somewhat comparable in that it's a land lease. And in these rates are higher. 8.5% is higher than what those were. So in the Dono deal, there is absolutely zero taxes or pilot payments during the first 2 years. So here we're starting at the 8.5, starting immediately with that, and then all the way through. In the Dono deal, 2 years of 0, and then 3 years of 5%, and then 7% thereafter. So it's higher than what the Dono deal was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rossetti. Any questions from other colleagues? We want to recognize Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, who has joined us as well.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Waiting to hear back on the total, how much PPP funds were given.
We have that number whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir.
Great. So the first round was 1.65 million. And then the second round was 2 million.
Okay.
And so 3.65 million. And was based on a formula amount of payroll and expenses. The first round will be forgiven totally. The second round will not. We'll have about 550,000, more or less. It's not been filed for yet and approved, but that will be done shortly. There'll be about 550,000 remaining on that, which can convert it to a 5-year loan at 1% interest. That is the detail.
Oh, thank you. So in addition to all your expenses, you have an additional 500,000 you still have to pay back also.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Salvatore. I think Aaron said it was like about 2.5 million. Looking at the term sheet, you're going to be financing, or is that new cash you're putting into the project?
That's equity that we'll be putting into the project. The financing is, I believe, I don't have the slide in front of me, but I believe it's $9.4 million, which would be conventional bank financing in the market.
I'm looking through my notes. Okay. I think those were my notes for the apartment part of the project. In Heron's presentation, it talked about the third, it's 3 condos, and the third condos were pursuant, Aaron, you said it was common space. So floor 2 and 3, looking through the term sheet, that's a common space you're referring to. And number 2, is there any financing for that third condo? And in the term sheet, I didn't see any pilot payment for that third condo.
Sure. So I'll start, and I'm sure these guys can help weigh in. So the idea would be to use, so the way the hotel is structured, right, it's also still attached to the Excel Center. So that space that we're talking about is within that area where there's a crossover between the hotel and the Excel, the Excel Center. And so the use of the space would be there. I believe right now the space is being used for meeting space. Mark, is that correct? So there's some banquet space and that sort of thing, where I think a part of that flooring is going to be used for residential amenities, but allowing the other use of that space to be used by both the hotel and or the developer. But there's also an opportunity for us to utilize that space for another purpose, which isn't completely fleshed out right now, but another opportunity for us to use that.
So that was the second and third floor, which was mostly the banquet and kitchen areas.
Mm-hmm.
And half of the third floor will be used for amenities for the residential component. We have additional 2 elevators that go from the garage up to these floors. And the goal would be, how could we use that potentially with the Excel Center and the second floor meeting space, which is really the bridge that goes across to the Excel Center internally, and then half of the third floor. There wouldn't be any income right now because there's no designated use yet, but the goal would be at least it would be carved out and not controlled by the bank or any collateral. So that could be freed up and be used for some kind of use. We've offered to the city, and Mike Freemuth, we've spoken about how we could use that space in a different manner. But the expenses would be carried by our 2 condos at this point.
Okay, so both the hotel and the apartment will carry the expense for that third floor.
Correct.
Okay.
And Councilman Surgeon, in the event that they were to use the space, right, if the hotel decided to utilize that space, the revenue is based off of gross revenue. So those dollars would be captured if they were using that space for any other purpose, it would still be captured in that hotel use under that pilot for gross revenues, since it's all based on gross revenues.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that explains that new condo. Aaron, just for my own information, in your for the hotel, the ground lease, I'm sorry. The proposed is to have a purchase price of only $1. Why would we do that?
So I think what's important to note is that the city of Hartford only has the ground lease on the property. We don't actually own the asset itself. We do have security in the asset as it relates to the HUD 108 loan. And most importantly, if this property were to sell as a straight purchase and sales, the property would then turn into a greater tax producing property. And so the benefit for us would be to get it back into a tax to that level, right? Whatever it ended up being. And so we didn't really see, because we really don't own the asset and it's really just a ground lease to support the overall development, the dollar, it makes sense because we're going to get a benefit in the future taxes that we get back once it relates back to a tax producing property.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll yield the floor to other members.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Question. Assuming that this deal goes through, who is going to be the operator of the DoubleTree?
An affiliate of Waterford Hotel Group.
Is that the same affiliate that operates the Hilton currently?
Correct.
And who might that be?
I don't have the exact legal name, but it's Waterford something HT Hilton. You know, it's an entity that it's actually the entity that has an agreement to manage between us and the owners and the management company, which is a separate company itself.
Thank you for that. Now, obviously, we recognize that there's going to be some internal renovations. Is there going to be anything done to the exterior of the hotel building?
Very minimal signage would be the big thing on the top of the building and then lower level. And the other recognizable thing would be, as Randy develops the plans, we will have the residential component have a front door. So your lobby street level will show the two components.
Okay, so no facade repointing or none, no.
No, yeah, Hilton is not requiring anything, and at this point that would not be the case. So also, internal and operational change. Also
to the windows are going to stay the same?
Yeah.
Okay, and regarding the staff that's currently there, we actually had requested before the number of Hartford residents that actually are currently working inside of the hotel. Do we have that report yet that can be provided to the council?
So we have more or less the number. I don't think we're able to, for privacy reasons, release names to the public.
No, not looking for names, just the number of.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I think it's around 17.
17
Hartford residents. Yep.
1700 residents. Okay.
Right.
Now, from out of that 17, would you happen to know if they actually are property owners that do they occupy a single or double multifamily house?
I would not know that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Council President.
Yes, just for clarification purposes, we had substitute language on the term sheet sent over by Corporation Counsel, and I want to make sure that before we vote on this, Council got a chance to read it. David, would you be able to pull it up on the screen, please? So that there are no confusions at all, and we're all on the same page.
Yes.
Did everyone get a chance to read that change?
I don't see the screen if it's being shared.
It's not being shared yet by David.
If easier, Council President, I have the email on my screen that.
Sure, if you could share it, Erin.
Sure. Do you see that?
We do.
Okay.
Perhaps you can read it for those of us who can't see well.
Could you, Erin, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. So this is an email sent today by Attorney Howard Rifkin. We respectfully request that at tonight's OMBG, the following language be substituted in the term sheet under hotel project owner responsibilities. The first point is to say, continue the collective bargaining agreement by and between HT 315 Trumbull Street Associates LLC and Unite Here Local 217, effective as of September 20th, 2018 and expiring on September 19, 2022. The agreement may be modified with the express consent of the employee's collective bargaining representative in accordance with applicable federal labor law. So the difference there in that statement was the agreement may be modified with the express consent of the employee's collective bargaining representative in accordance with applicable federal law. Second point we put in there, engage in good faith negotiations and enter a successor agreement effective September 19, 2022. Adding the language or upon the effective date of a new agreement, which may occur sooner or later as agreed to by the parties, reflecting a new DoubleTree flag or comparable first class hotel. The third point is added completely, which is to maintain at a minimum the existing wage and benefit levels of employees who continue to work for the DoubleTree after September 19, 2022, provided that reductions or increases in any wage and benefit levels may be implemented with the express consent of the employee's collective bargaining representative in accordance with applicable federal labor law. And then, of course, the other point that was in there was negotiate and execute new franchise affiliation for new hotel flag, the Hilton DoubleTree. And to point that this language change has been agreed to by both Local 217 and the Waterford Group, that it will ensure the existing wage and benefit levels of employees who continue to work at the DoubleTree will be maintained.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. If you could close the screen. Thank you, Erin. So before I hand it over back to Councilman Clark, Council will have to make a motion to accept this language. So I will defer back to you, Councilman Clark, for further discussion or clarification. But before referring this over to Council, we're going to have to adopt that language in the term sheet. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's duly noted. And for anyone that is going to be making the motion, please make sure, and I will help you.
This is going to be real. Aaron, can we put that back up again? I was going to try to see if I could try to make this motion with, how can I just, okay. So how about, first of all, through you, Mr. Chair, if there's any more questions, let me know when you would like a motion to be put on the floor.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman. I'm also with my questions. I think that this has been a good presentation with the understanding that we need to act very swiftly. We did hear that time is of the essence, and just the out of curiosity, maybe Mike or Charles or Aaron can answer this question. How much time do we actually have left before the lights go dark in the hotel?
Well, I think that's probably an answer best from either Mark or Len Woolman. But my understanding is time is up. The hotel is burning cash far in excess of its expenses. Its revenues. At the current burn rate, it's another $1 million out the door in the next 2 months, 3 months. It just can't be sustained and takes money away from renovating the building. So I think we're there. How much actual cash is in the kitty and how many people are booked in the hotel, that's probably better left to the Woolmans, but I think for all intent and purposes, TJ, we're at the doorstep.
Thank you, Mike. Mark or Len, would you concur?
I do concur. And I mean, as Aaron mentioned earlier, now we're running roughly 30% occupancy. It varies by day. Some days are a lot less. Some days are more, depending on whether there's a group in town. And, the big challenge we have as well is the latest variant of this virus. And unfortunately, we were really hoping we'd see some corporate business returning. But as we all know, some of the major insurance companies have delayed their return to office, and so have other companies and consultants, which is just putting more strain back on our industry, which has been incredibly tough during this whole pandemic.
Thank you, Len. Are there any additional questions from my council colleagues before we proceed? Council President.
I don't have any questions, but I just confirmed with our corporation counsel that we can make a motion to adopt the language for the record that was sent by his email and read to this committee by Aaron. Instead of
are you going to make the motion then?
Yes. Yes.
How about making the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to send.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the term sheet based on the language that was read by Aaron Howard from Development Services that was submitted by our corporation counsel, Howard Rifkin, today to the council body.
Favorably.
Favorably.
Great. I'll second the motion.
All right, the motion has been made by Council President Rosado to adopt the amended term sheet as it was sent over by our city's corporation counsel and read by our Director of Economic Development, Aaron Howard. And it has been seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon to send this amended term sheet and resolution back to the Hartford City Council favorably for our next meeting. I love it. I love it. And are there any discussions? No. Any discussions? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. The ayes have it. This item has been favorably passed to City Council for our next meeting.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just want to thank the Womans and Mr. Salvatore for their patience with us as we go through this process, because we all want to make sure we don't have a dark building downtown the city, because we do care about our city. And I want to also thank Mr. Friedman for all his input and his time in educating us and defending the city and being very open for a proposal like this with the city. I just want to send that thank you out to everyone.
And through you, Chair, I also want to piggyback off Councilwoman Surgeon's comments. Thank you for working with us, for working with the union, for coming up with an agreement that was favorable to everyone, and for making yourself available for the many questions that we have. So thank you and good luck to all.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say, I concur with my esteemed colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Just a small note. Just a small note, Mr. Chair. Let's not forget the hard work of your DDS staff in helping to pull this all together. we need a little bit of love here.
Oh, you got it. You got it.
As always, Mr. Charles, it's very nice to see you back on the screen. Thank you for your dedication and leadership.
Aaron, more than anything else, and for Aaron for allowing us the patience, with all our questions and your patience with us. So Aaron, thank you for all your hard work in getting us to this point. So yes, Mr. Matthews, we do need to thank you, Development Services, for all their hard work.
Aaron has been readily available at any time and called any time. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And this is our second rodeo. Hopefully we get to the finish line on this one.
Yes, yes. Time is of the essence. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Randy.
Have a good evening.
You too. All right, we have our last item, and hopefully we can get done with this before our public hearing, which starts at 7. It is item 2.3, Mayor Bronin with the company resolution recognizing the hardship and difficulties experienced by both Aircraft Welding Manufacturing Company LLC and Sound Hill Graphics Inc. and the good faith efforts made by both entities in filing their respective applications for exemption under Connecticut General Statute Section 12-81. And we have here Nikki Von der Wunts with Alpha Graphics, and Dan Thibodeau of Aircraft Welding and Manufacturing Company. You may take it away.
Well, they're each separate. Can you hear me okay? I'm Dan Thibodeau.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm a CPA and I've worked with aircraft welding for a few years. And they always filed on a timely basis. They asked me to do 19 filing for the PPT, personal property tax, which I did, and I sent it in the way I normally do with certified mail return receipt. I went to do the same thing for the 21, for the 1920 filing, and I went to the Rockville post office, which is near my office, and they were closed up. And it was the end of October, and so I knew I had to put it in the mail. So I just dropped it in the mail, and apparently it was not received. I got a notice from actually Aircraft Welding got a notice from Gail Gantic and said, I guess is retired at this point, but she said that it wasn't received. So I sent them a copy and I said it wasn't mailed, certified mail return receipt, but it was in fact mailed. And so nothing happened with it until this notice here. They filed every year for many, many years, always on time, and they've never been late on this. And the one time that it did happen was me, because of the PPP. I'm sorry, because of the pandemic causing the post office to be closed. I couldn't go in and do the certified mail. Everything was shut down. So I feel very bad about it, but they've never missed before. They're also an industry that serves the airline industry. They're a manufacturing company serving the airline industry, and all the orders are way down. So this would be an enormous economic hardship on them if they were not able to have this exemption granted. So that's all I have to say. And I apologize for the fact that it wasn't mailed, certified mail.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau, for that. Any questions by my colleagues? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, to say that I truly understand, Mr. Thibodeau, the post office and the issues of getting in my other time, absentee ballots last year was very difficult and getting to everyone. So is there anyone from the administration, Mr. Chair?
I know, Councilwoman, it was the information provided to us that there was no persons representing the administration. Council President, am I correct?
That's correct.
I just want to confirm, what Mr. Thibodeau said, that over the years of filing, this is one of the first time they've ever been late in getting that information to the city.
I would say that we can definitely, between this meeting and our Monday's meeting, we can reach out to the administration for confirmation of that. I would figure either the Director of Finance or our tax collector.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Nicholas, you have the floor. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you, TJ. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say thank you for your time this evening. It was very inspiring to see your work earlier and your efforts to revive the downtown sector. My name is Nick Bonnerwentz. I'm the owner of Soundhill Graphics. We are in the city center on 915 Main Street and employ in full employment up to 20 employees. And our primary business is printing. We do a lot of work in the community, both for the city, for UConn, for travelers, the Hartford Public Library, Boys and Girls Club, and many other entities in the city. In my case, I had acquired the business from another owner in 2018. She had run the business successfully for 20 years. And when I purchased the business, I employed her bookkeeper and accountant as the primary bookkeeper. But as you know, the pandemic hit our business very hard, just like many of the others here. She really, sorry to be so anecdotal, but she relocated to Maine to take care of her mother during the pandemic and couldn't be here physically. And ultimately, I ended up furloughing about 80% of my staff during the peak, including her. So I'm here representing myself. I filed the taxes and I did successfully file for the extension. I had done the filing properly in the first year of operation in 2019. And I would just say that Gail Gantic was accessible by phone and was just really a great person to talk to. However, I didn't understand that having filed the extension, that if I failed, that I just frankly missed the deadline for the extension and really had no idea that my exemption would be inadvertently removed from the filing. And thus, we are here today. So, my request is consideration for the hardship and also to recognize that you're supporting a downtown entity that wishes to remain viable. It is hopeful. We are at about 60% of our previous operating revenue at Soundhill Graphics. We do business as Alpha Graphics, by the way, in case you might have heard that name. And obviously, any undue burden from the tax related to the manufacturing exemption being inadvertently missed would be a pretty devastating blow to us as well. So I appreciate your patience and hope that you can understand my plight, and appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from my colleagues?
I just want a point of clarification on what was Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon's question again?
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just confirming, that both these businesses in the past, I know Nicholas just bought his business, so he wasn't have any history with us, but just confirming that, in the past, businesses have been filed their information on a timely basis.
Okay.
And, we truly do understand with the pandemic last year of what happened. And so if you're ready, Mr. Chair, for a motion.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So I put a motion in the floor to favorably report back to council the forgiveness of the lateness in their payment of taxes. I'm sorry?
No, that was Director Matthews.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Your vote. Yeah, so basically we're favorably sending back to council the forgiveness of the filing application being late.
I second the motion.
All right. Motion has been made by Councilwoman Surgeon, and I will go with the voice I heard first, which is Councilman Gale, second by Councilman Gale, to send this item back to council with a favorable recommendation. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor with item being passed favorably?
Aye.
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 Ayes. The ayes have it. This item is passed. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. This item, we will take this item back up for discussion.
On behalf of Aircraft Welding, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. We will vote on this on Monday's meeting at 7 o'clock. Since we have no items to discuss and there's no more items on our agenda, I am now adjourning this special committee meeting of the Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to all our presenters, and thank you to the viewing audience. Please be safe and stay healthy until we see each other again. Have a good evening. Take care.
Good night.